Over the course of a long and often turbulent life, Wyatt Earp became a living legend. He was, at one time or another, a saloon keeper, a brothel owner, a lawman in different jurisdictions, a gambler, a miner of gold and silver, and a professional referee for boxing matches. Late in life, he was a consultant for Western films in Hollywood. His detractors claimed that his reputation was inflated and that he was both a crooked referee and an unreliable source for stories of his exploits. His many admirers disagreed and support him as one of the toughest lawmen of the American West. Here are 40 facts about an American legend, Wyatt Earp. Number 1, he spent most of his early boyhood in Pella, Illinois. Wyatt Earp was too young to enlist when the American Civil War broke out, though he made several attempts to run away from home and lie about his age to recruiters, each thwarted by his father. His father was a veteran of the Mexican War and responsible for raising and training companies of troops for the Union war effort. In the spring of 1864, Nicholas Earp, Wyatt's father, organized a train of wagons to move to San Bernardino in far-off California, and Wyatt arrived there in mid-December, where he sought work, using the experience he gained driving wagons on the cross-country trip. Before the Civil War was over, he was employed as a teamster in California. Number 2, he supported the building of the Transcontinental Railroad by freighting supplies. By 1868, Earp was known as an experienced freighter, and he began freighting supplies to the railhead of the Union Pacific Railroad as it crept westward. While at the railhead, he learned to both gamble at cards and to referee boxing matches, developing a reputation as a fair but tough official. In Cheyenne, Wyoming on the 4th of July of 1869, he officiated a fight which featured Professor Mike Johnson, who later taught future American President Theodore Roosevelt how to defend himself at the New York Athletic Club. The fight took place before an estimated 3,000 spectators, a significant number of fans for a bare-knuckled boxing event. Number 3, his first experience as a lawman was in Lamar, Missouri. The Earp family removed to Missouri in 1869, and Wyatt took over the job as town constable from his father. He married his first wife there in 1870, but her sudden death from typhoid fever affected Wyatt badly, and his fortunes went into decline. He was charged with embezzling funds collected for Lamar's schools. He was also sued by citizens of the town for filing false amounts of money collected, deflating them and keeping the difference, which caused citizens to lose property. In 1871, he was charged with stealing horses. Earp was in jail awaiting trial when he escaped, fleeing to Peoria, Illinois, where Missouri law couldn't touch him. Number 4, he was charged with running a brothel in Peoria. In 1872, Earp's downward spiral continued when he was arrested, along with his brother Morgan and several women, under a charge of keeping a brothel. They were fined and released. That fall, he was arrested yet again for operating another brothel aboard a steamship he owned. A woman arrested with him by the name of Sally Heckle claimed to be his wife. Earp later claimed to spend the years 1873 and 1874 on a buffalo hunt, though there is no evidence of him actually doing so. With Peoria no longer hospitable to him, he and Sally, who called herself Sarah Earp, traveled to Wichita, where his brother James Earp operated yet another brothel, arriving in the booming cattle town in 1874. Number 5, he was a bouncer and a police officer in Wichita. Cattle drives to the Wichita railhead brought Texas steers to the railroad, and cowboys to the saloons and brothels of the town. Earp worked as a bouncer in his brother's brothel, and later joined the town marshal's office as a deputy. The only record of his firing his gun during the time in Wichita came when it fell from his holster and accidentally discharged upon hitting the floor. Wichita became too hot for Earp after he beat a former deputy in a fistfight after the latter complained that Wyatt was using his position to gain employment for his brothers. When James Earp opened another brothel in Dodge City, another boomtown, Wyatt relocated there in the spring of 1876. Number 6, he spent a winter in the mining camp of Deadwood in the Dakota Territory. While in Dodge City, Earp heard of the discovery of gold in the Black Hills of the Dakota Territory, and like many others, he traveled there to make his fortune. The winter months of 1876-1877 were spent there, though his late arrival to the booming camp prevented him from staking a claim. Instead, Earp hauled cut firewood cleared by the miners and prospectors into the town. At first, his brother Morgan was with him in Deadwood, but the absence of a gold strike induced him to return to Dodge City. It is sometimes reported that Earp knew Wild Bill Hickok in Deadwood, but the latter died a month before Wyatt's arrival in the camp. It is possible, though, he sold firewood to Al Swearingen, owner of the Gem Saloon. Number 7. He was a deputy marshal in Dodge City. Earp returned to Dodge City following his winter in the Black Hills, joining the town's marshal office as a deputy in 1877. In the fall of that year, he was commissioned as a United States deputy marshal and dispatched in pursuit of a bank robber who had fled to Texas. In early 1878, he arrived at the Beehive Saloon in Clear Fork, Texas, where he met for the first time with Doc Holliday. He learned from the dentist and gambler that the subject of his pursuit had returned to Kansas, and Earp returned to Dodge City. By May of 1878, Earp was back in Dodge, serving as a town marshal and supplementing his income by gambling in the saloons. Number 8. Doc Holliday saved Wyatt's life in Dodge City. In the summer of 1878, Doc Holliday and Big Nose Kate, said to be his wife, arrived in Dodge City, intent on relieving the cowboys who had recently arrived at the end of a cattle drive of their hard-earned wages. Kate was a prostitute, and Holliday a gambler. That summer, a group of drunken cowboys entered the Long Branch Saloon, where Holliday was gambling, after shooting up the street outside. When Earp, acting as town marshal, entered the saloon to arrest the miscreants, he found several guns already drawn and pointing at him. Before Earp could react, Holliday placed his own revolver at the head of one of the cowboys, inducing the others to lower their guns. Earp later credited Holliday with saving his life. Number 9. Earp was well known to Bat Masterson during his tenure in Dodge City. While Wyatt Earp was in Dodge City, he became acquainted with fellow lawman and Western legend Bat Masterson. One interest which they shared was the sport of boxing. Earp was by then an experienced referee, well versed in the Marquess of Queensberry rules which governed conduct in the ring. Masterson's level of interest in boxing and other sports, including horse racing, led him to become a sports writer in New York later in life. As a journalist, Masterson was considered a leading authority on the sport of boxing in the early 20th century, attending most of the most important fights of the early 1900s. Number 10. Earp and Masterson were involved in the shooting of a drunken cowboy. In July 1878, a drunken cowboy named George Hoyt shot up the street outside of the Comique Theater, including some shots into the theater which disrupted a performance. Hoyt was accompanied by several others, and they galloped out of the city, with Earp, Masterson, and a posse in pursuit. Later in the morning, Earp and Masterson ran down Hoyt just south of town near the Arkansas River, and according to his own account, Earp shot and killed the cowboy. Dodge City newspaper accounts of the incident report that Hoyt died several weeks later of gangrene, disputing Earp's retelling to a biographer.